This week's US CQM forecast alert is latent true economic growth rate in 2022 Q2 is almost 0%. This week, many major economic indicators have been updated. The Industrial Production Index has been revised considerably down in the past. Retail sales rose more than expected. Both CPI and PPI increased more than 1% in June, and the inflation situation is getting worse. As a result, the economic growth rate was negative again on the expenditure side. That on the income side is as low as 0.69%. The average economic growth rate on both the expenditure and income side is 0.28%, almost 0%. The inflation situation is getting worse. The growth rate of headline inflation and the GDP price deflator exceed 7% and 8% respectively. In the PCA forecast, the real GDP growth rate has been revised down to 0.45%, while the growth rate of GDP price deflator has exceeded 9%. As a latent true economic growth rate, CQM considers the average of GDP on both the expenditure and income side. This is the same idea that BEA recommends GDO as a better economic growth rate. Please refer to the Klein and Makino paper below about why CQM estimate and forecast statistical discrepancy. The average GDP growth rate on both the CQM expenditure and income side is 0.28% in 2022 Q2, and the latent true economic growth rate can be considered almost 0%. PCA has also forecasted an economic growth rate of 0.5% or less. It is clear that inflation is getting worse. Conclusion from this week's CQM forecast alert. First, latent true economic growth rate of 2022 Q2 can be considered almost 0%. Second, if the economic growth rate of minus 0.13% on the expenditure side is revised further down, the import of goods in June is a key. CQM forecasts the growth rate of 0.4% from ARIMA. Third, PCA has also revised down economic growth rate to 0.45%. Fourth, headline inflation and GDP price deflator increased more than 7% and 8% respectively, and Biden inflation is getting worse. Fifth, the US economy is on the brink of the recession. This slide contains additional information about this week's detailed CQM forecast, the original developer of CQM, and CQM theory papers.